The year is 1462. A Turkish scout approaches the city of Targoviste in Wallachia, expecting to find Vlad III, the voivode who has been raiding Ottoman territory for months. Instead, he finds a forest. But the trees aren't wood. They're bodies. 20,000 bodies impaled on wooden stakes that stretch for miles in every direction, arranged in perfect geometric rows like a farmer's crop. Some have been dead for weeks. Crows have taken the eyes. The sun has turned the flesh black, but others are still alive. A woman, impaled through the pelvis, has been dying for 3 days. She can still turn her head. She can still scream. Next to her, a child, perhaps 7 years old, impaled through the chest, has stopped making sounds, but his eyes still move, tracking the Turkish soldiers as they vomit in horror. This isn't a battlefield. This is Vlad's greeting. This is what he does to anyone who opposes him. And the Ottoman army of 90,000 men, hardened warriors who have conquered half of Europe, takes one look at this forest of the dying and turns back. The Sultan himself, Mehmed Dasud, the conqueror of Constantinople, decides that Wallachia isn't worth fighting a man capable of this. What you're about to discover isn't just medieval cruelty. It's systematic torture refined into an art form by a man who understood that fear was more powerful than armies. Vlad the Impaler ruled Wallachia for only 6 years, but in that time, he killed an estimated 40 to 100,000 people through methods so brutal that his reputation alone defended his borders. If you've ever wondered where the Dracula legend came from, you're in the right place. Here we examine the German and Russian chronicles that documented his crimes, the Romanian sources that tried to defend him, the Ottoman records that described him with a mixture of hatred and terror, and the archaeological evidence that proves the stories weren't exaggerated. Every view helps us continue this work. Now let's follow Vlad from childhood captivity to that forest of 20,000 corpses, because understanding how someone becomes capable of such horror requires looking at every step of the journey. The question isn't whether he was a monster. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is whether monsters are born or created. To understand Vlad's torture methods, you must first understand his childhood. Born in 1431 to Vlad II Dracul, ruler of Wallachia, young Vlad spent his early years watching his father navigate between two powers that wanted to crush his small principality. To the west, Hungary demanded tribute. To the east, the Ottoman Empire demanded submission. Vlad II chose the Ottomans. As guarantee of his father's loyalty, young Vlad and his brother Radu were sent to the Ottoman court as hostages. Vlad was 11 years old. He would spend the next 6 years in Ottoman captivity, watching Turkish methods of execution and torture, learning that power came through fear, and developing a hatred for his captors that would define his life. Ottoman chronicles mention the hostage princes only briefly, but they note that young Vlad was rebellious, that he resisted training, that he watched executions with disturbing intensity. When he was finally released at 17 after his father's assassination, Vlad returned to Wallachia changed. The boy who left had learned lessons about power that he would apply with methods that shocked even the Ottomans who taught him. Vlad's preferred method of execution was impalement, but to understand why this was so horrific, you need to understand the technique. This wasn't simply driving a stake through someone's body. This was engineering designed to maximize suffering. The German pamphlets published during Vlad's lifetime, sensationalized propaganda but based on eyewitness accounts, describe his method in clinical detail. A stake would be prepared, the end rounded rather than pointed, oiled to reduce friction. The victim would be positioned over the stake, and weights would be attached to their legs. The stake would enter the body through the anus or vagina, and gravity would slowly pull the person down onto it. The rounded end was crucial. A sharp stake would kill quickly by piercing vital organs. Vlad's stakes were designed to push organs aside rather than puncture them. The process could take hours or even days. A skilled executioner, and Vlad employed many, could impale someone so the stake emerged from the shoulder, missing heart and lungs entirely, leaving the victim to die slowly from shock and blood loss. Think about what this means. Execution methods designed not just to kill, but to maximize the duration and intensity of suffering. This wasn't punishment in any normal sense. This was torture elevated to the level of public spectacle and psychological warfare. Russian chronicles from the period, generally more favorable to Vlad because he fought the Ottomans, still describe his impalement methods with horror. One chronicle notes that Vlad would have victims impaled at different heights, with rank determining position. High nobles would be impaled on tall stakes, so they died closer to God. Common criminals on shorter stakes. The arrangement created a forest of suffering organized by social hierarchy, even in death. But impalement was only one method. Let's talk about what Vlad did to his enemies when he wanted to send specific messages. The methods varied based on the crime, or what Vlad perceived as crime, and each was designed to communicate something different. For merchants who he believed were cheating customers, Vlad would have them boiled alive in large cauldrons. The execution would take place in the market square where they had conducted business. The water would be heated slowly, starting lukewarm, increasing in temperature over hours. Victims would scream as their skin turned red, then began to blister, then finally to separate from their flesh. Death came only when the heat reached internal organs. For nobles who betrayed him, Vlad preferred flaying. The victim would be tied to a post, and executioners would use sharp knives to remove the skin in strips, starting from the extremities and working toward the torso. The process took hours. Victims would remain conscious for most of it, watching their own skin peeled away. Vlad would sometimes have the skin preserved and displayed as warning. For women accused of adultery, Vlad had a specific method documented in multiple sources. The woman would have her breasts cut off, then would be impaled through the vagina with the stake emerging from her mouth. Her lover, if identified, would be impaled next to her, positioned so that in death they appeared to embrace. This wasn't just execution. This was theater, performing morality lessons through mutilated bodies. For children of his enemies, and several sources confirm Vlad didn't spare children, he would sometimes have them impaled on the same stake as their mothers, the smaller body positioned higher, so the mother died watching her child suffer above her. The psychological cruelty here is almost incomprehensible. These weren't casualties of war. They were deliberate choices to maximize trauma. Now, let's talk about the most famous incident of Vlad's reign, because it reveals how completely he had integrated torture into his governance. In 1459, Vlad invited the boyars, the noble families of Wallachia, to an Easter feast. These were the families that had murdered his father and brother years before. They came to the feast dressed in their finest clothes, expecting celebration. After the meal, Vlad asked how many princes they had known. The eldest nobles boasted of serving under many princes, demonstrating their power and longevity. Vlad thanked them for their honesty. Then his guards seized them. The eldest and most influential nobles were impaled immediately, their bodies planted around the castle as decoration. The younger nobles and their families were forced to march 60 miles to Poenari Castle in their feast clothes. Those who couldn't keep pace were beaten or killed. Those who survived were put to work building Vlad's fortress, They worked in silk and velvet until the fine clothes rotted off their bodies. They worked until they dropped dead from exhaustion. According to chronicles, none of the nobles forced into this labor survived. Vlad had eliminated an entire class of potential opposition in a single day, and he had made them build his fortress before dying. The efficiency and cruelty were equally calculated. But perhaps the most psychologically disturbing aspect of Vlad's torture methods was how he integrated them into his daily life. Multiple sources describe Vlad dining outdoors among impaled victims, sometimes hundreds of them, enjoying his meals while the dying screamed around him. He would hold court in these forests of the impaled, conducting state business while surrounded by rotting corpses and dying prisoners. One German pamphlet describes an incident where Vlad was dining among impaled Turkish prisoners when a courtier complained about the smell. Vlad had the man impaled immediately on a stake higher than the others, telling him that now he was above the smell. Whether this specific incident is true or embellished, multiple sources confirm that Vlad regularly ate among his victims and punished anyone who showed disgust. Think about what this suggests psychologically. A man so desensitized to suffering that he could eat dinner while surrounded by people dying in agony. This isn't simple cruelty. This is complete disassociation from normal human empathy. Vlad had trained himself, or been trained by his experiences, to view human suffering as entertainment. The forest of 20,000 impaled corpses that greeted the Ottoman army in 1462 represents the peak of Vlad's methods. When Sultan Mehmed II invaded Wallachia with 90,000 troops, Vlad couldn't face him in open battle. Instead, Vlad retreated, burning his own cities and villages to deny the Ottomans resources, poisoning wells, conducting night raids, and impaling every Turkish soldier he captured. The impalement wasn't random. Vlad arranged the bodies in geometric patterns designed to be seen from a distance. He positioned them along the main roads leading to his capital. He included not just soldiers but Turkish civilians, merchants, anyone connected to the Ottoman Empire. And he kept some alive on the stakes for weeks, ensuring that when the Ottoman army arrived, they would find not just bodies but a still dying forest. Contemporary Ottoman chronicles describe the Sultan's reaction. Mehmed II, who had conquered Constantinople, who had personally ordered the execution of thousands, who had never retreated from any enemy, saw Vlad's forest and decided to withdraw. The official reason given was supply issues. But private letters from Ottoman officers describe an army demoralized by encountering something beyond normal warfare. Vlad had found the limit of what even the Ottomans could tolerate. How effective was this psychological warfare? Extremely. Wallachia remained independent for another 4 years, despite being a tiny principality surrounded by powers that wanted to absorb it. Vlad's reputation alone defended his borders better than any army. Other rulers avoided conflict with him, not because they feared his military power, but because they feared becoming part of his forests. But Vlad's methods eventually destroyed him. In 1462, after the Ottomans retreated, Hungarian forces that were supposed to be his allies imprisoned him. The official reason was his raids into Hungarian territory. The real reason, suggested by Hungarian letters, was that Vlad had become too unpredictable, too brutal even for medieval European standards. Nobles feared him spreading his methods. Vlad spent 12 years in Hungarian imprisonment. When he was finally released and reinstalled as voivode of Wallachia in 1476, his methods hadn't changed. Within months, he was impaling enemies again. Within 2 months, he was assassinated, possibly by his own boyars, possibly by Turkish agents. His head was sent to the Sultan in Constantinople, preserved in honey, as proof that the impaler was finally dead. The legacy of Vlad's torture methods is complicated. To Romanians, he's often viewed as a national hero who defended his homeland against overwhelming odds using any means necessary. To the rest of Europe, he became the inspiration for Dracula, a monster who drank blood and killed without mercy. Both views contain truth. What's undeniable is that Vlad refined torture into systematic psychological warfare in ways that influenced military thinking for centuries. The idea that reputation and fear could substitute for military power, that extreme violence against some enemies could deter others, these concepts became standard in European warfare. Vlad proved that a small power could defend itself through terror if that terror was extreme and visible enough. The specific torture methods, particularly impalement, also spread. Ottoman, Russian, and Central European powers all adopted variations of Vlad's techniques. The refinement of making execution slow and public, designed to maximize both the victim's suffering and the observer's horror, became standard practice in many regions. Vlad didn't invent torture, but he perfected its use as political tool. Modern Romania struggles with how to remember Vlad. He defended independence, yes, but at what cost? The 40 to 100,000 deaths attributed to him represent roughly 10% of Wallachhia's population during his rule. That's genocide-level killing, and most victims weren't foreign invaders but his own subjects. You've just witnessed 6 years of systematic torture disguised as governance. If this disturbs you, good. It should. Vlad the Impaler is often romanticized as a defender against the Ottomans or mythologized as Dracula. But the historical figure was neither noble defender nor supernatural monster. He was a human being who refined torture into an art form and used it as a weapon of control. If you want to understand how fear becomes policy, how torture becomes normalized, subscribe and join us. Comment what shocked you most about Vlad's methods. And remember, the forests of impaled victims are long gone, but the castles where he dined among dying prisoners still stand in Romania. Tourists visit them. The stones remember what the legends sanitize. Vlad ruled for 6 years total. He killed at minimum 40,000 people. His methods were so extreme that even the conqueror of Constantinople retreated rather than face him. And Romanian history books still debate whether he was hero or villain. That debate reveals more about how we rationalize violence than about Vlad himself. The impaled bodies don't care about rationalization. They just remember dying.